So, the big question, what can I do to buy a house in 2024 and actually make it affordable? Well, the good news is there are some options, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. I'm John Benya, and this is the Love Southern Maryland channel here on YouTube. So today we're going to talk about the 5 hacks that you can do to try and make a house more affordable in 2024. Now, as we know, interest rates in 2023 just went absolutely crazy.
Well, honey, I've extended our line of credit and exhausted all our savings. We should be good for another month.
And there's a lot of people who sort of stepped back from the real estate market, both buyers and sellers, because they weren't happy with the way that the market was going. Now, what happened was prices didn't go down because as buyers stepped back, so did sellers. So there's not a lot of inventory that we're seeing out there. So one of the things that we're going to talk about is how to try and get access to properties that would otherwise not normally be available. So the first hack that we've got for 2024 is finding a property that has an assumable mortgage. Now, here's the great thing about assumable mortgages. There's a lot of home sellers that are out there who actually have mortgages that are assumable, and their real estate agent either doesn't know or isn't marketing the fact that they have a loan that can be assumed. Now, buying a home with an assumable mortgage does take a little bit longer than normal. It's about 45, some cases 60 days from contract to close, but the upside to it is huge. So imagine going out and buying a house that's worth $500,000, but instead of spending 6% on your mortgage rate, you're only spending 3 or 3.4. That's a huge difference. Now, the downside, and there is unfortunately a downside to this, is when you buy an assumed mortgage, there is a delta. That's the difference between what is owed on the mortgage and what the house is currently worth. And that amount is not part of that mortgage, meaning you have to come up cash with that difference. Now, in some cases, you can get a secondary loan to cover that amount. So the majority of the principal amount owed on the home is under that 2.5% or 3.5% rate, and the rest of it would be under a higher interest rate. But let's assume for a second that assuming a mortgage is not really a possibility. So what other options are there? Well, doing a mortgage rate buy down is also a possibility. So there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. When you look at purchasing a home, you have what's called closing costs, right? Well, in those closing costs, you can add in what's called a mortgage rate buy down. And there's 2 different ways generally to go about this. There's little nuances and variations of each, but I'm going to explain the 2 basic formats. The first way is that you spend 1 point or 1% of the mortgage to do what's called a buy down. Now, that 1% will generally buy your rate down by about 1/4 of a point. So if you're at 6.5% on your mortgage rate, you would be at 6.25. And that would be for the life of the loan. For as long as you hold the property, you would have that buy down. Now, if you want to gamble a little bit more, let's say, on what the market is going to do, meaning that you think that the mortgage rates are going to go down significantly over the next year to 2 years, there's what they call a 2-1 buy down. And what that is generally for a 2-1 buy down, you're looking at, and again, this varies based on who your mortgage lender is, but it's generally about 2.2 to 2.3% of the cost of the mortgage. So if you have a $100,000 mortgage, you're looking at a $2,200 payment up front, roughly. And what that will do is it will buy your mortgage rate down by 2 points the first year you own the loan, and then 1 point for the second year you own the loan, and then the third year it will go to what the normal rate is. So why is that helpful? Well, if rates are at 7.5% and you get a buy down to 5.5%, if rates go down over the next year to 2 years, back into the mid-5s, you can refinance and you will have never had to make that exorbitantly high mortgage payment at 7.5%. So all of this sounds great, but how do you come up with that sort of cash? Well, it would not be unusual to ask the seller of the house that you're buying to contribute to the closing costs and use that money towards your rate buy down. It's a great option to save money, either short-term or long-term, depending on how you want to play it. So here's another great house hack, and this is actually one of my personal favorites. Buy a property that is not listed in the MLS. Now, my wife and I, we've purchased 4 properties over the last 2 years. All 4 of those properties were purchased off of the MLS, meaning they were direct purchases between buyer and seller. Now, is it easy to find those properties? Maybe, maybe not. But if you're looking for a very specific type of property, for example, you're looking for waterfront homes in a certain community, or you're looking for houses that have large detached buildings or something like that, there is a way that you can search, or you can have your agent search for the homeowners that own those sort of properties and reach out to them directly and see if they might be interested in selling. Now, the benefit to this is if you're buying off MLS, there may be less in real estate fees, fees that people like myself, realtors, charge. And if those fees are discounted, that's a great way to save money. Also, it helps you really target exactly what you want. And you can be really specific about what type of property and what type of features you're looking for in a house. Now, my 4th hack sounds obvious, but it absolutely holds true. And every single property I have purchased in the last 15 years has followed this rule. Always buy a fixer-upper. Never buy the nicest house in the neighborhood. Always buy the property that needs the most work, because that's the property that has the most opportunity for appreciation and sweat equity for you to grow your wealth as you are going through your home buying journey. Now, I know it's not fun, but the value or the upside to being able to do something like that reaps its reward in dividends multiple times over. So my 5th and final hack, this is something that's become really popular over the last 5 to 7 years, and it's buying a property with what's called an ADU. That's an accessory dwelling unit. Now, that can come in a number of different ways. It could be a property that has a basement with a full in-law suite. It could be a property that has an entire second house on it. Or it could be a property that has a detached garage with an apartment sitting over top of the property. I've seen it all sorts of different ways. But the bottom line is this. Find a property that has an ADU that you can rent out to defray the cost of your mortgage. If you do it right, you will cut 50 to 70% off of your mortgage payment every single month just thanks to the rental income on that accessory unit. Now, here's a little trick. In Maryland, they don't typically call it an ADU. They call it an in-law apartment or an in-law suite, but ADU seems to be a term that's more commonly used on the West Coast than it is here in the Mid-Atlantic region. But that doesn't change the fact of what it is. It's an accessory dwelling unit. So look for properties that have that sort of opportunity, and you will find that you're cutting your housing costs down considerably over the life of your loan. So those are my hacks for 2024, and where I think the biggest opportunities lie in growing wealth through real estate and through primary residences even in this coming year. Now, if you have any additional questions or you'd like to get your home search started, hit the subscribe button, give me a call, my number's down below, and my team will be happy to assist you in finding the perfect house that matches your house hacking goals in 2024.